following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Blowing out of the backfield, exploding down the sideline.
This is Hangin' with the Boys, presented by Wingstop, where flavor gets its wings. Now, your hosts, Nate Newton, Kurt Daniels, Jesse Holley, and Shannon Gross.
Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Central Time, so you know that can mean only one thing, that you get a live look at Tostitos Championship Plaza at Ford Center at the Star. It is a brisk 26 degrees in Frisco, Texas, man. And it's windy, and it feels like 15 degrees outside. Fellas, winter has finally arrived. It took midway through February to get here, but we finally have it. And welcome to the show, Hanging with the Boys, presented by Wingstop. Nate Newton, Jesse Holley, Kurt Daniels, Shannon Gross. How are you? Chris Beam on the ones and twos. How you fellas feeling? Got the Super Bowl behind us. We can start the season. We can move forward. Man, what a game. Did y'all see that coming?
I'm just so amazed that the MVP Todd Bowles, man, it just amazed me how he won that, African-American coach on defense. Wow, that was so great, man.
Yeah, that whole defense should have got MVP, right?
Yeah, Jesse, I know I got you stumped there like, wow. But you know what? I'm talking all defense. So everything y'all talk about today is going to be about defense for Nate. I'm just letting you know.
Nah, I see where you're going with this. I see where you're going with this. This is a little foreshadowing, a little bit of
Tom Brady is so smart. And Shannon said this yesterday when I called him because he was the only one to respond to me because he was the one not smart enough to realize that I was going all defense when I called y'all. He said, I'm like, wow, Shannon, did you like that defense? He like, well, that's what I call you about to talk about defense. Are you ready? Why nobody in the Dallas area is ready to talk about defense, fellas?
We're ready, Nate. We've been talking about it all year. Have you not been on the show? It just hasn't been in a positive light.
Have they been participating? Now let me stop clouding, man. Let's have a great show, fellas. I ain't finna
No. But I like where you're going with this. I pick up what you're putting down and how defensively. Well, yes, you had Tom Brady, and yes, he's the golden boy. Defensively, to be able to mount up and shut down a prolific offense like the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, despite they were missing their two tackles and their receivers dropped a ton of passes, defense won that football game. The defense shut down the most high-powered offense in the National Football League. We can all agree on that. There isn't an offense that's more high-powered, more ready to score points in bunches than the Kansas City Chiefs. And they were basically
that team they played 2 weeks earlier.
Right. and they Todd Bowles, to your credit, what you were saying, Nate, put together a masterful game plan. Man, it seems just so, and I'm going where you're going, Nate, to have linebackers that can run and play and catch, tackle and not have to do a dance move after every single play, but just get back up and line up and go to business, go back to work. I mean, to have guys in the secondary to be able to do stuff that they were doing, then your guys up front, they reap the benefits. When you know that behind you, my guys are going to be able to cover and be able to tackle, I can pin my ears back and just go to work up front. And we saw it on display on all three levels defensively for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that Super Bowl game.
Go ahead, Kurt. I'm sorry.
That was something that I was kind of surprised about, Jesse. You mentioned those linebackers. I mean, the front four is getting a lot of publicity for, obviously they played a great game and put that pressure on Mahomes. But I was just surprised. I really didn't know those guys very well, but just to see how fast they were, how physical they were. They could, come up for the run or drop back for the pass. I mean, I don't know. In some ways, I kind of thought maybe the Cowboys were okay at linebacker, and they really needed to fortify that front. They still do, but man, what a difference it makes when you got some guys there in the middle who can really do both.
I'm telling you something, man. And Jesse, you've been in meetings like this, and I've definitely been in meetings like this. When your defensive coordinator and your head coach walk in and say, fellas, we're going to bracket these two guys, they automatically told you that 4 guys was not going to participate in the regular game plan. We're going to have 2 guys on the wide receiver, and we're going to have 2 guys on the tight end. The rest of y'all going to have to play the run and tag along with the pass. And when you got 4 guys, you can only say that when you have 4 horses up front that can get it done. And they had the proper 4 horses up front, and one guy played with 7 fingers. He played with 7 fingers, dog. He was a slot.
That Mahomes scrambled for 497 yards is like the most all season. That's not even gaining yards. He scrambled in the backfield 497 yards in that game with all that pressure he was getting. That's insane.
Bro, I'm gonna tell you something, man. Against Washington, I don't even see where they participated. They got beat 31-23 by this team. New Orleans got a decent offense. They got beat 31-20. Green Bay 31-20. And that's with 3 interceptions by the quarterback in the second half. They was only able to mount up to. And then this thing that they did to one of the greatest young quarterbacks we've seen in a long time. I mean, but it's too bad they're gonna get cherry picked, because they won't be doing that again on defense, because they gonna get took. They got 2 guys, Barrett and another guy that's free agents. They gone. They gone. Cowboys, they free.
I mean, like you said, they had 2 guys taking out Hill. They had 2 guys taking out Kelsey. Well, I mean, why couldn't Kansas City? I mean, there had to be somebody open. I mean, why couldn't they go to that short passing route? I mean, what was it? Just too much pressure?
It was. And see, from the first play, they tried to run a screen, and they was on him. Like Barrett was on him 58. Like, nah, we ain't giving up screens. We ain't giving up the shorts. And they was like, okay, we're going to bracket these guys. So when you bracket a guy, you take away Kelsey out of the middle of the field, and all those things where teams were giving, well, we'll let him catch it in front of us. Well, he's a beast to tackle, and he can get down the seam, and he can run. So you take away the short and the long on him and Hill. Now you asking guys that are 2s and 3s to beat these other guys. And they felt they 2s and 3s were equal, because their number 2 quarterback is only a burner. I mean, wide receiver. He's only just a get down the field guy. So when he was trying to throw him long and they all over him, that wasn't happening. The offensive line, I think they had a hurt offensive line. That's no excuse. You to the Super Bowl now, baby. You don't beat COVID and everything else. It's time to ball. So,
yeah, but how much a factor did that play, though? I mean, Kansas City lost their left tackle Fisher. They lost him in the AFC
find him next year.
I mean, oh.
Yeah, find him next year.
I think it had some factor in it, but the thing that's this Kansas City offense is predicated on is the big play, and they pull you to deep waters and let you drown with the big plays, and they want you to match their big play ability, and most teams can't. But when the big play isn't happening, and the thing that usually gets you going in the short game is Travis Kelce.
Yes,
and
sir.
Throughout this entire year, he's been unguardable. So when your big plays are not happening, and they had a couple of them where, Pat was just a little bit off, and that's because the rush was coming and he wasn't able to set and throw. There was about 3 or 4 of them that if he was able to connect, would have been touchdowns. And then that would have put you in that foot race again and saying, all right, now they're up 21-7 or they're up 21-14 or it's 21-all, and it's a battle back and forth. And they'll, but when that deep game is not going, when they can't hit you over the head with the long passes and stuff like that, then they go and look, say, okay, let's find Travis Kelce in the middle, because those receivers have lifted the defense. They have run these vertical routes, and now the defense is lifted. Now I got, which all year long, Travis Kelce has been unguardable underneath, and I'll take my matchups all day long. And I don't care if it's a Devin White. I don't care if it's a whatever linebacker you want to name. I like my chances with Travis Kelce against that linebacker. And they just said, listen, we're not giving that to you. And if you're going to connect with receiver number 2 or 3 down the field, then we'll live with that. But we're not going to let Tyreek Hill give us the peace sign all day long and rush and have 230 yards receiving like he did in the first matchup. And we're not going to let Travis Kelce have 150 yards like he did in the first matchup. We're going to take these 2 guys out, and you either have to beat us with the running game because we trust our front 4, or Pringle or one of these other guys, these secondary guys, will have to beat us. But these 2 guys won't be able to beat us, and they just couldn't connect on that. And they bank on that. They bank on being able to say, you guys are in a foot race, and we are much better and much more equipped for a foot race and then a 100-yard dash than most teams are. They could never get it going. And Tom Brady is so methodical. When you watch that 2-minute drive right before the half, it takes me back to when the Cowboys played the Patriots in New England, and then they methodically walked us down the field, and they scored a touchdown. They threw a touchdown pass to Aaron Hernandez with 6 seconds left. The very next year, I'm in New England, and just so happened that we're reviewing that game. And to hear the backstory of how they knew they wanted to have the ball in that position to win a game with the time, and how much time they were going to leave on the clock for the opposing team. And I just had a flashback because they said, we want to leave you with 10 seconds or less when you get the ball back. That Dallas game, there was 6 seconds left when they got the ball back after that touchdown to try to come back and win a game. We couldn't. And then before the half, you saw Kansas City got the ball around like 6 or 7 seconds left to go in the half. And that was that. Like, Tom Brady is so good at that. He's so good at that. And that, to me, was really the nail in the coffin. Like, before the second half even started, I was like, this is it. Like, if they score here, this is it. Because even if Kansas City comes back out and score in the third quarter, you got to give the ball back to Tom Brady. And he's going to systematically walk you down and burn up as much clock as he can. He's not going to turn the ball over. And they're just going to find a way to smother you and suffocate you. And they did that in the second half. And man, it was a great defensive effort by Tampa Bay. It was fun to watch defensively.
You know what's so amazing? You know what's so amazing?
Can I do a real quick insanity check on this show? I just want to do that real quick. Is there anyone on this show that does not agree with me thinking that Tom Brady is hands down the greatest NFL quarterback of all time? Does anyone disagree with that on this show?
I mean,
it's hard to argue.
Nate has a guy who won 3 Super Bowls with, so he may have a different story.
Let me say this right here, man. Let me say this right here. When you have a guy like Leonard Fournette that everybody in the league kicked to the curb, except one guy. Tom Brady told him right before the playoffs, get your hard hat on. Let's get in it. You will be in the film room with me. You will not leave the field until I leave the field after practice. And because I need you. I need you to bring these linebackers down. We don't want to worry about taking the top off and getting the linebackers deep. I want you to bring them so I can work with Gronk and with Antonio Brown across that middle. And he worked with these guys. And you heard story after story after story all week of Tom Brady said this. Tom Brady told me this. Tom Brady calmed me like this. And I'm saying to myself, Johnny Unitas, move over, baby. You've met your match. Montana, move over, man. Give him some room. You've got a guy that thinks like you think. And Deion Sanders told me 7 or 8 years ago, he said the master, he said, nope, everybody get killed for doing this. And Tom Brady been doing it for 20 years now. Dinking and dunking and taking what the defense give him. And he wins game. And we criticize every other quarterback for managing games. But we don't criticize the GOAT. Just think about it now. He would dink
That's
and dunk you down the field. And nobody says nothing. Oh, he don't have a long game. Well, he threw more long balls than anybody. But when he needed to dink and dunk against Green Bay, he did it. When he needed to dink and dunk against this team here, he did it. You heard Jesse say 85 years ago against Dallas, he dink and dunked. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Win the game.
His stats in that game were pretty pedestrian overall. I mean, you're exactly right. He takes what the defense gives you. But the thing that impressed me through that whole week, like you said, Nate, you heard these stories come out about him, sending texts to players. I think one guy was crying after the AFC championship, or the NFC championship, and he said, stop it, no crying. We still got a game to win, And it made me wonder, that's the kind of leadership you wonder if the Cowboys have, and how long have they not had it? But again, he's the greatest, and anything he says, guys are going to listen. Maybe he's got the skins on the wall where nobody in Dallas really has that. And
I'm gonna tell you something, man. Troy Aikman had it, even when we were losing. It's called that unbreakable will. That when I walk through those doors, no matter what I've done off the field, when I walk through these doors of the place that I'm employed at, my whole attitude changed. And for those 8 or 9 or maybe 10 hours you're there, all you see is football in me. And right, Tom Brady has the skins, but this is something he even told his owner when they drafted him. He said, I'm something special. You will enjoy me while I'm here. He told his owner that. He said, I will give you all that I got.
Have the Cowboys had that since Aikman? I mean, did you see that kind of stuff in Romo, Jesse, or do we see it in Dak?
Yes. But there's different degrees of it.
Yes, it is.
And again, only Tom Brady can tell a guy, hey, who's never been to the championship, who's never been to the Super Bowl, who's never won an NFC championship, hey, listen, don't cry. We ain't done. Like, I know this is probably the pinnacle of where you've been at in your career, but I'm just here to tell you, this is number 10 for me. So I know what it's going to take to win this against that team. So dry your eyes. We still got work to do. And in that moment, you look at this guy and you go, oh snap, he knows what he's talking about, and you kind of lock in. It's a different story when the guys that you're trying to go to battle with, you're all on the same page. In the sense of, Tony could never tell a guy, hey, don't listen, dry your eyes. We gotta win the Super Bowl. I know what it takes to get there because he's never done it. Same thing with Dak. While they both have leadership, they're all kind of on the same playing field when it comes to the elevation of play in the playoffs. Not the people around Tony Romo, the people around Dak Prescott. Jason Witten couldn't tell those guys that because he never done it. So it's different when you hear it from a guy who's done it not only once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Right now you go, oh, okay. When he speaks, it kind of reverberates with a different tone, across the locker room, because like this is a guy who's actually done it, opposed to a guy who's saying it, and he means well, but you're like, yeah, dude, like enjoy this with me. You know what I'm saying? Like we never been here before. And Tom's like, enjoy this little moment, but we got a bigger picture.
Let me ask you this right here, and this is a question to all you guys. I see Tom Brady in a few commercials, but I'm gonna ask you this right here, and it's no barb at nobody because we all make money off of the Dallas Cowboys. But during the offseason, every time we hear about Tom Brady, it's in connection to what? Is it football? Mm-hmm. Or is it in connection to other things? Who got in trouble this past offseason? The most trouble for breaking COVID rules. He did. He did. Now, we saw Dak try to do the same thing, but it was just out of control when Tom Brady was taking his guys to not his home, but to a football field, high school football field. Every time you hear a Tom Brady, even when you hear he massaged the footballs. What was it in connection with? You don't have enough guys on this team, and I can honestly say this, and don't worry about they don't love the game enough to step up to somebody and say, this is what you should do. People that love the game stays around the game. You know, and I told people, I didn't understand and truly appreciate the game until late in my career. So it can happen for everybody, but you got to have enough horses around you that's pulling in the right direction. So when that one get out of line, just like, you know, a bobsled, you know, you got a dog that's behind you in the back that know what's going on and one in the front. So if you get out of line with that one that's in the front that's pulling, that one in the back gonna snip your heels and get you back in line. Ain't no heel snippers here, bro. Dak can lead all he want. He ain't got no heel snippers, bro. What's wrong? Why y'all laughing, man? I'm trying to be serious.
I've never heard that analogy before. I like that analogy.
I like that.
I like it.
That should be a headline. Nick should write that this year. The Cowboys ain't got no heel snippers. That would get some clicks. All right, I tell you what. You brought this up, Nate. We'll let Kurt get into it when we come back. Talked about the offseason, breaking protocol. There's going to be a lot of talk about how they handled the offseason this year with COVID.
Yes, sir. That was a good read.
They handled it last year. The president of the NFLPA came out back at I believe the end of December and talked about how they should have less of a offseason program because it was beneficial, and then listed a lot of reasons why. I want to get y'all's take on this. And Kurt, get your notebook ready because you got all the talking points on this one. So we'll turn it over to you. But let's talk about it because it's a very interesting conversation, and I think we're going to have different points of view on it. So stay tuned. We'll get into that. We'll get into a lot more when we come back to take our first break. We'll be right back on Hangin' with the Boys.
Is your family a Cowboys family? Have you taken holiday photos at the Star? Was your wedding theme blue and silver? Have you convinced your kids them is spelled with a D? If so, every game day feels like a vacation to you, so treat it like one. Whether you're traveling to the game or watching from your favorite vacation spot, book a place to stay on Hotels.com. Proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Just like all of you, we at SeatGeek can't wait until we're back in the stands at full strength cheering on the Cowboys and singing along to our favorite songs again. We're using this time to make discovering, buying, and selling tickets to events in Dallas easier. Plus, every ticket purchased on SeatGeek is protected by our buyer guarantee, which means you'll get your money back or better if your event is canceled. Guaranteed. Download the SeatGeek app today, and when the time is right, let's go. SeatGeek.
Grab some OtterBox gear and get ready for Hangin' with the Boys. From rugged venture coolers to tough as nails elevation tumblers, we've got what you need to keep your game day drinks frosty and your football feast ice cold. And with cases, screen protectors, and power accessories, you can defend your phone and stay connected to every play. Gear up at OtterBox.com and amp up the fun of every Cowboys game. That's OtterBox.com.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Hangin' with the Boys.
Watching the game in old basketball shorts or baggy sweats is for amateurs. If you want to relax like a pro, upgrade to the comfort of Tommy John Loungewear. It looks awesome, feels even better. It's got pockets for snacks and is machine washable for any unpredictable nacho cheese fill. Shop loungewear at TommyJohn.com/Cowboys for 15% off your first order. TommyJohn.com/Cowboys. Nate wears them while he drinks his coffee and bangs his cup loudly.
I'm sorry, Shannon. I am so sorry.
It is okay. Hey.
I mean, Jesse can cuss and do all these things, and you never mention that.
Well, he doesn't do it on the show. That's why.
Oh, that's right. He doesn't. I'm sorry.
Jesse actually did not cuss.
I'm sorry, Jesse. I apologize.
He put the symbols in there. I'm just the bus driver, and you're the rowdy children on this show. So every once in a while I have to call you out. So
I'm a big tattletale. Nate's a big tattletale.
I'm gonna tell y'all something right now. People who are listening at home, if you do not want it broadcast, do not tell it to Nathaniel Newton, because it's gonna come out.
Hey, let me ask you this, Jesse. My uncle listens to this show, and in the crock pot, the ribs, and all of that. I said I wanted some shrimp. I was going to try to fry some shrimp, so I was calling around to ask how to do that. He said, well, ask Jesse. He may put it in a crock pot. I said, Jesse don't put no fried shrimp in no crock pot. He said, you never know. He do everything else.
Well, I put them in the air fryer, though. I will put some shrimp in the air fryer. That's
okay.
I tell you who Nate is to our group. You know how you have those friends where you always have to say, hey, make sure, this isn't public knowledge, don't tell anybody. And say, I wouldn't tell anybody that. Unless you tell them that and give them that disclaimer, there is a very good possibility that something will be talked about that you say off the air but you just got to make sure you put that in there, because if not, there's a chance that what you talk about will get out. So
okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Nate's that friend. It's okay, because I don't think you've ever said anything on the show that we were like, man, why did you say that on the air yet?
Oh, well, I got something that your mom said that I was to put on there that you were like, what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let Mother Gross tell that story.
When she gets back on the show. Okay. Okay. All right, Kurt, talk us through this.
Yeah.
JC, what is it? Treater, however you pronounce his name, the president of the NFLPA, had some comments. You sent us the article over this week, and it's very interesting. I talked to Nate about it yesterday, and he had some interesting comments, and I want to know what you guys. So give us kind of the Cliff Notes version of what the president of the NFLPA had to say, Kurt.
Yeah, he just said that, this past season due to COVID, a lot of the offseason programs they didn't happen. There was no OTAs, there's no mini camp. It was all done, the meetings were done virtually. There's no, off-season workouts of any kind. Training camp was shortened up a little. Preseason games were obviously gone. What the president of the NFLPA was saying, that this should be the new norm, that I think he said, his quote was, I believe the changes implemented this season have demonstrated that we can put an entertaining product on the field while further reducing wear and tear on our players' bodies. And so, he felt that, the games weren't that sloppy starting out, that there was high scoring, they were fun to watch. And because of that, there wasn't a need to have players there all summer coming in the spring to do these off-season workouts. And so, it kind of flew under the radar. But in reading this, I definitely want to get, Nate, you and Jesse's opinions on, as former players, yes, it would save some wear and tear maybe, but wouldn't it really affect the quality on the field?
Like I told Shannon yesterday, the love of money would not let this happen. Merchandise has to be sold. Players have to be visible. TVs have to get their cuts and their takes. And to build up into this season, they may cut back some days or maybe some hours of when the player's going to be on field, but the ownership would not let this go because they need their dollars.
Now, when it comes to the production part, you guys remember earlier in the year, we had a record pace of torn ACLs and Achilles injuries that we saw earlier in the football season from guys' bodies who just haven't adjusted. And the more time off away from the facilities that you give these professional athletes, and I use the term professional loosely, because some of them don't act professionally.
Nate Newton.
The more time that you give them off, the more and more you're going to see showing up out of shape, trouble off the field. See, it's easy to say, oh yeah, sure, let's not have these things when there's a pandemic and you cannot go anywhere, right? When you're forced to stay in the home and ridiculed if you're caught outside of your home. It's a whole other thing if you're saying, let's not have these off-season workouts and I'm free to go party and hang out and do all those other things and not have to report anywhere until June or July. That's when you run into the guys. We already saw guys coming out of shape when there was no access to the facilities. So when you continue to give guys this ability to not have to show up to a designated place, we are creatures of habit. We are creatures of routine. As professional and as profound as we may be as athletes, we need direction. And when we do not get direction, we get wayward. And that can lead to terrible outcomes. You'll have more players showing up to training camp out of shape, trying to work themselves back in shape. The injury numbers will go through the roof, and you'll start seeing more off the field incidents happening in regards to DUIs and domestic situations and, fights and assault. Because when we don't have direction, and I don't mean everybody, this is a broad for everybody, but there's a large majority of young, immature, very rich players who do not know how to handle themselves without a sense of direction. And so while it may seem good on the surface, like, oh yeah, see, we don't really need this, we saw earlier in the year the product that was put on the field. It was ugly. It was really, really ugly. We saw the injury numbers earlier in the year. Those were, and they were all like ACLs. They were all like season-ending injuries. I think that's a bad idea. I really do. I think structure for athletes, especially football players, and Nate, you can speak to this. I know for me, that structure is something that was so paramount for everything that we do. And when you take that away, and Gronk joked about it. He said, yeah, well, what I did was I ran on a Monday and I just put on 3 different shirts and sent it in.
I'm going to tell you.
Everybody's not Gronk, but you think that's the mentality, right? Here's Rob Gronkowski, and he's like, I'm not doing all that running every day, all day. I'll work my way into shape as the season goes on. And this is Rob Gronkowski. He's one of the best tight ends in NFL history. And he said, well, I just put on the 3 different shirts on the same workout in one day just to satisfy my coach's need for me to work out 3 days a week.
Let me say something, man. You going to let every guy that's 300 pounds plus free for 5 months. You're going to let every guy that's 300 pounds, so when they come in camp looking like this thing we let go here 8 weeks into our season, who I couldn't pronounce his name because people thought I couldn't. I didn't want to. And I would not pronounce his name now. If you want a bunch of those running around your camp, have at it. Have at it. And then when it's all said and done, now this is where it's going to really lead to, is now you're going to start saying we don't need all these weeks of training camp because they're already talking about cutting back on training camp. So now all of these fat dudes walking the camp. And the coach is going crazy with the ownership. And you start asking, well, we need like 3 weeks now just to get in shape. Nah, it ain't going to work, brother. I'm telling you. Then the dollar bills, the ownership going to lose dollar bills. Now, it will work if the Player Association come back and say, well, we know we wanted 49 or 50%. We'll take 46%. Okay, hands up.
I think,
but unless you give them back some points, they ain't going for that, bro.
Yeah, it's definitely a collective bargaining agreement, and I think part of that, you may see, the owners want an 18th game. They're going to have 17 this year to make up some revenue, and they're shooting for 18. And this may be a bargaining chip where the players say, yeah, we'll play that 18th game, but we're not going to have so much time in the offseason. We're required to be there. So,
and a lot of guys going to get cut. And a lot of fat guys going to get cut. I'm just telling you. Watch.
If they agree to that, we'll continue to be the dumbest union in all of sports. Baseball, basketball, hockey, they all laugh at our players union. All of them. They all laugh at because the NFL players union is the weakest, the most divided, and the dumbest. And if you think adding an 18 game and taking away more practice time is going to be better for you, listen. These athletes now, they don't want to work. They don't want to work when you got to work, and now you're gonna give them more free time. Yeah. You're asking, you're begging, you're inviting trouble for your league. That's just my pick on that.
And to Nate's point, the NFL has done an amazing job over the last 10 to 15 years to make the NFL a 12-month-a-year sport. If you think about it, it's not by accident.
Ever since Jimmy Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Think about it.
Since Jimmy Johnson came into the league.
You've got, the only really downtime is between after the Super Bowl and when free agency starts, which is the middle of March. Think about it. You got free agency in March. You got the draft in April. You got OTAs in May. You got OTAs and mini camps in June. You got training camp in July and August. Then you roll into the season, and in the end of the season you got the Pro Bowl, and then you got the Super Bowl again. And then it's a 12, and they've done a tremendous job with the draft, taking the draft from this boring, who cares, whatever, to turning it into this 3-day, you can't miss this event, at least on the first night anyway. They've turned it into this drama that they start teasing a month out, and now that's turned into an event on its own. So they're slowly building every month to be a huge event. And like Nate said, if you take off-season activities out of that takes 2 or 3 months of programming off the table, because they're in the news, they're leading off SportsCenter every day, they're being talked about, they're building their brand, they're making money for the league, which in turn makes money for the players. So like Jesse said, if they do this, they're not thinking big picture from a player standpoint, and they're making the pie smaller. So if they do it, I think, like you said, Kurt, it's a bargaining chip. It's something that they'll give and take, but I don't think there's any way they just do away with off-season activities. It doesn't make sense on either side to me.
Yeah. Well, what if this season it has all the appearances that it's going to be much like last season because of COVID restrictions? I mean, how much is this going to hurt the Cowboys? They got another new defensive coordinator.
Then we need to go sign Tom Brady so he can go get a football field somewhere so we can get our players going. I'm being honest, man. I'm being honest. We were allowed to tell our fans that, and it's 4 or 5 other new coaches last year that didn't have this disaster we had. But we were allowed to tell our fans, okay, we got injured, we had a new coach, we had new this, players didn't buy in. Well, everybody else bought in.
Right. Now you're new again.
So it's no way in the world. If I'm Coach McCarthy, I'd just be getting fined. I just write a letter to the people in New York, Big Park Avenue, say, look at here, man, I got to work this year. I got to go to work. I have to go to work. And these players got to go to work.
And most of these coaches, you take half the league is probably turning into younger coaches who understand the Zoom etiquette and way of teaching. But most coaches aren't built like that. Most coaches are more built on, let me get my hands on these players. Let's get on the football field. Let's actually see this thing in motion with live people in person, bodies on bodies, pads on pads, helmet on a helmet. That's how they function. And when you take that away and you ask them to go and do things virtually, they're not good at doing things virtually. They're not good at doing this thing over the computer where guys are sitting in another room. No, I want to be able to see the white of your eyes. I want to be able to hear the grunts that's happening on the football field. I want to be able to correct on the run. I want to be able to see the players and go, you know what? This guy can't cover in the flats. This guy can't really cover. That guy can't really run routes. This guy really cannot block. You know what? He can't throw. But I don't get a chance to see that if all my offseason is done virtually or cut down to a very limited amount. And then you get in training camp and you make it even harder on yourselves because I got to now.
The speed picks up.
The speed picks up, but also now I got to try to evaluate players, make a roster, and get ready for a football season. Like that's hard in itself just to evaluate the players and get a roster. Now you got to add into how do I game plan for my next opponent in the next 3 or 4 weeks in one training camp? That's not happening.
This is the big thing that everybody say. Well, they do it in college. Well, if you Bama, is you really worried? Is you Clemson? Are you really worried? Okay. All right, you just go out and say, hey, that's the number. That dude there's a future first round pick. Come play with us.
Yeah, but you still get winter workouts. You still get spring ball.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they say that the college player come from virtually 0 to 1,000 miles an hour. Well, you can't put that product on, like you said, Jack, you can't put that product because this guy may look good playing at Bama, but what if he come in and, like you say, can't run a correct route, and here's Dak throwing to a space where a guy's supposed to be, but in college he could get there because of supreme athletic ability. But here, you can't get there against Tampa Bay because they ain't excuse me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just to give you an idea how far things have come, I was watching an interview with Tom Landry probably back in 1976, 77, something like that. And it was the second week of training camp. The rookies had been there 2 weeks. It was the first week of the veterans. That Saturday, after the first week, they were playing a full full contact scrimmage, tackling to the ground, full contact. And then they had 6 preseason games before the actual season started.
It was 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks. When I got there, it was 6 weeks. But before I got there, it was 8 weeks, and we had 240 guys. And by the time I got there, it was down to 160.
Oh,
you know, and it was a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath. I mean, you got in there, man. You got your sword and you got the gladiating as soon as you got there, bro. It's they didn't ask me was I in shape. They just found some pads where they wasn't really pads. They put together some pads because they ain't had nothing fat for a fat guy. So they put together a couple of pads.
They just put
and welded a helmet,
people,
and here I go.
I came into the league on the tail end of that.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Go ahead, Shannon. I said I came in the league on the tail end of that. Like when I got into the league, we were still doing 2-a-days, rookie mini camp. I was ready to quit. I said this is they ran us into the ground. Rookie.
This is worse than 4th and long.
Yeah. I'm like, you
finna cuss. He almost cussed.
I said I don't know about this, man. And it was full pads, 2-a-days. It wasn't all this 2-a-day walkthrough stuff. No. It was full pads, hitting, tackling every day. Wasn't no schedule off day. You know when you got your off day? When coach felt like you did enough to get an off day. It wasn't like no every 3rd day or every 5th day you got a designated off day.
I'm gonna tell you what's so funny, man. We was in California a couple of years ago, and they did the 3-day acclimation deal, and then on the 4th day that morning they did a walkthrough, right? Then that afternoon they had practice, and like 4 guys missed practice. Some of the veteran off day. I said to myself, they just came through a walkthrough. And on the first day and I love it because now all teams have that option. Before the Cowboys never had that option. Coach Landry used to kill us and Coach Johnson used to kill us. We didn't have we had to go like 1 week we went like 10 days straight before we had an off day, and that was just a half a night off. And so
let's take our last break. Let's take our last break. When we come back, we need to congratulate one of an 88 did something really big and overdue and well-deserving over the weekend. Let's talk about who the next person will be to do that same feat as a Dallas Cowboy. And then whatever else Kurt wants to talk about. In the last segment, come back, find out what all that is and more on Hanging with the Boys.
Just like all of you, we at SeatGeek can't wait until we're back in the stands at full strength cheering on the Cowboys and singing along to our favorite songs again. We're using this time to make discovering, buying, and selling tickets to events in Dallas easier. Plus, every ticket purchased on SeatGeek is protected by our buyer guarantee, which means you'll get your money back or better if your event is canceled. Guaranteed. Download the SeatGeek app today, and when the time is right, let's go. SeatGeek.
It's game day. You know what that means. First, kebab prep. Steak, pepper, onion, steak, pepper, onion. Next, a counterclockwise lap around the room. Now the lucky grease-stained jersey goes on. And lastly, the dance. You know the one. This is a game day ritual no matter where you are. Whether you're traveling to the game or watching from your favorite vacation spot, book a place to stay on Hotels.com and keep the tradition alive and well. Hotels.com, proud partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Grab some OtterBox gear and get ready for Hanging with the Boys. From rugged venture coolers to tough as nails elevation tumblers, we've got what you need to keep your game day drinks frosty and your football feast ice cold. And with cases, screen protectors, and power accessories, you can defend your phone and stay connected to every play. Gear up at OtterBox.com and amp up the fun of every Cowboys game. That's OtterBox.com.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Hanging with the Boys.
You know what you should probably do when this weather clears up and it's safe to drive? You should probably go tour AT&T Stadium. It's the home of the Dallas Cowboys. You can go run on the field. You can see the locker room and a lot more. Tours are available daily, so check out the details. Visit attstadium.com/tours. One of these segments, I will let you know about all of my experiences at the stadium. And Jesse and Nate can tell you how nice that locker room is. So, fellas, finally, Drew Pearson got into the Hall of Fame over the weekend. Long overdue, much deserved. I've seen news and seen reports that due up next, possibly on the Hall of Fame ballot, could be Tony Romo and Demarcus Ware. Are those possibly, or either one of those going to get in? Either one of those worthy? Should they get in? First time ballot? Are those the next two guys that will get in? Kurt, what do you think?
Ware should, for sure. I think he's one of the all-time leaders in sacks. He should be a problem. Romo's going to be one of those kind of bubble guys where, you know, if he'd won a title, you know, he'd probably, you know, compare him to Eli Manning. I mean, he statistically and as a quarterback, he's probably, better. But you know, Manning's got the rings, so Romo's probably going to be one of those Hall of Very Goods type guys.
Yeah, I think Demarcus Ware is a shoo-in. Like that's hands down, without a question. D. Ware will wear a yellow jacket sooner rather than later. First ballot, it depends on who all he's going up against, but for sure he's getting in there. Tony might be on that Drew Pearson route to the Hall of Fame if he gets in. It's probably going to have to be one of those centennial type deals, or you know, down the line where maybe the ballot isn't as thick of letting people, you know, into that year. I think he has some really good numbers, but ultimately, and we say that it shouldn't be, but quarterbacks are judged on rings. And you can have all the numbers you want in the world, but did you get that bling bling? And for Tony, he was unable to secure it. And so there'll be a lot of quarterbacks. When you look at the Eli Mannings and the Ben Roethlisbergers of the world, when they begin to retire and start making their march towards the Hall of Fame, you know, it all depends on who Tony's run up against, and you know, maybe in a couple years, but I don't think initially when he's available to get in, he won't get in. It'll take some time for him to get in.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Jesse and Nate too. I don't know how much you watched Drew Pearson, but he wasn't all that big. He was 6 foot, 180 something. He wasn't all that fast. And he
played quarterback at Tulsa.
Yeah, a lot of the highlights I saw, looked like he was kind of more of a body catcher type than, you know. But what was he, like a fantastic route runner, or did he just have a fantastic quarterback throwing to him? I mean, what made him so great, I guess?
His swag. And the knowing where to be. Mike Irvin said something one time, and Jesse may can expound on it a little bit better than I can. Mike Irvin said, it ain't that you got to be a great route runner. You just got to be where you're supposed to be when the ball needs to be there. And that's what he was to Roger. him and Roger just could look at each other and they knew what was going to happen. So, and he could always make that catch. You had Butch Johnson, who was much faster. You had a lot of other guys, Golden Riches, I think, guys like that was much faster, better route runners. But he was that complete package, and he was the guy that Roger believed in the most to make it happen. Had Tony Hill, a young Tony Hill that could fly, so he was that guy, just much more like Michael Irvin. We had a lot of guys that were faster, that could do everything, but when the ball was supposed to arrive at a certain place and we needed to play, Michael Irvin was that guy.
Hey, Kurt, I got a question for you. We were talking Hall of Fame stuff. It seems like recently when, former Cowboys have been up for or going to be up for the Hall of Fame, that they, it seems like they get inducted into the Ring of Honor as kind of a launching pad to help them get into the Hall of Fame. Do you see with Tony and Demarcus, being up for possible Hall of Fame nominations, do you think that we'll see them inducted into the Ring of Honor this year?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, they obviously will be at some point, but I don't know if it'll be this year or not. It may depend, if we have fans in the stands, if they want to make a big kind of production out of it or not. But when they'll go in, I'm not sure, but they'll definitely go in. I mean, you've got those two. You've got Witten will be going in here in a few years. I mean, there's some guys coming up that will definitely be included. There's some guys from the past that you wonder if, a lot of people would like to see included, an Everson Walls type or a Too Tall Jones or a Harvey Martin, and you wonder if they'll ever get a chance at it.
All the greats of the Steelers are in, all the greats of the Raiders are in. And, I used to jokingly say it is conspiracy theory against the Cowboys. That thing is real. that thing is real. I mean, we have more major guys in broadcasting around the league in the NFL in major spots. For these guys to be in the places that they're in, and I think sometime when you are that local guy that has that vote, you be like, here's my chance to make my mark, and it won't be for the Dallas Cowboys. Just think, we own CBS, we own Fox. We got Troy, we got Tony Romo, we got Moose Johnson. We got guys all over the place. We got Michael Irvin, we got Deion Sanders doing his thing. We got guys all over the place. Now, whether you want to say they're our guys or not, they're our guys. Yeah.
Oh, a guy from you, I was kind of disappointing as Cowboys fans to see, Lynch go into the Hall of Fame and Woodson not even, get close. I guess he got kind of close, but that's another guy you'd like to see from the Cowboys get in there is Darren Woodson. So,
like I say, the much money as Mr. Jones has made for these guys, much big ideas as he's brought, you would think, and people say, well, Nate, you acting like the rest of the guys. You right. I am. I'm a Dallas Cowboy through and through, so you right. I am acting like the other guys. It's conspiracy theory against the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Romo should get on there just broadcasting alone. Put him in there for that. Nah.
That's true.
He changed the game. Tony Romo changed the game when he became a broadcaster.
He definitely changed the pay scale.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kurt, you got 7 minutes. What are we talking about?
Well, there's a couple of news items that came out just within the last couple of days I thought I'd throw at you to get your opinions on. I don't know if you guys heard Russell Wilson kind of made some news yesterday, in fact. A lot of rumors out there now that he might be requesting a trade behind the scenes, and he's not happy with Seattle, and that he wants more say in free agent signings, that sort of thing. It's just all kind of the rumor mill kicking up, or do you think there's a chance that Seattle would let Russell get out of there?
Let me say this before we start. Quarterbacks, y'all may not want to listen to those fat offensive linemen. Things ain't nice in that real world like you think now. Everybody ain't gonna fall on that apple pie like Tom Brady. Trust me when I tell you this. Things ain't always nice outside the fence now. Stay in your own pasture, bro.
But let me also say this. I love
it too. Yeah,
love it I love the fact that players have finally come around to understanding just how much power they actually have in this league. And while most people will say, well, you guys need to shut up and dribble or shut up and just play, you make whatever. I love the fact, because at the end of the day, no matter how much these quarterbacks or players make, the ownership makes 3 times that, 4 times that from their play on the field. So while people may say, well, he made $100 million. Cool. Seattle made $600 million. They made a bill, whatever it is.
Yes, they did.
So if there's a situation, because teams, when they are done with you, when your services are no longer needed for that team, they don't give you many options. They just say, bloop, we're done with you. See ya, you're out the door. So I am so happy and glad to see players understanding that now and saying, you know what? Things aren't the way that I want them to be, so I'm out. Just like you would do me if I wasn't performing up to where you wanted me to perform, you tell me, get out. So I'm going to see myself out because you aren't doing things that make me happy as your franchise player. So I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I know that some of these owners, they're not used to the pushback. And we won't get into the history of the NFL, because there was an interesting thing that I did watch prior to. And I'm sorry to kind of cut into your thing, Kurt. But there was an interesting thing that I watched, and maybe one day we'll get deeper into this thing, because it has a kind of a racial understanding of the NFL and where the NFL started. And I didn't know that there was a period where the NFL had kind of blackballed black players from playing in the league for a lot of these teams. And you start to just think to yourself, right? This was like happening like in the 1930s and 40s. And you look at some of the people and ownership of teams, like the owners of those teams who are in their 80s and 90s, like they grew up in that era. Like they grew up in that era of how football was played back then. Like their foundation was taught in that era. So again, that's another conversation for another day, but it just gives you a better understanding of how sometimes you say, well, why isn't there any black coaches and black, ownership and things of that nature and GMs and stuff like that. And you start looking at the history of the NFL and now who's running the NFL, what the owners and the people in power, a lot of them come from that area. So I am extremely happy when I see guys like Russell Wilson and Westbrook and Watson kind of take back that power and say, no, if you guys aren't going to do right by me, then I'm gonna flex my power and go elsewhere.
Doesn't it make?
But to give even a little bit further, is some rumblings. Okay, Green Bay won't help with their salary cap, and their quarterback saying, okay, when I needed help last year in the draft, y'all went out and repaid me with a quarterback, my future backup. So if y'all want me, guess what? We're going to have to do some restructuring of contracts. So I'm with you there. I mean, but the reason I said that right there, because it is not a lot of teams built for that quick success. Ray's saying, let people know how valuable are. I'm with that as a player. But be careful which team you choose, that you may not be walking into a worse situation.
Wouldn't it make sense for owners to talk to a guy like Wilson to get his perspective and opinion on free agents? I think he has said that, he's a player. He's seeing these. He's up against these guys. He may know things about them more so than a general manager sitting in an office.
Well, what value?
Opening up a can of worms.
The way they look at it, like they told Aaron Rodgers before the McCarthy deal, when he went in and said, "Hey, what about this and what about that?" And they told him, "You go play, and we'll get players." But he never forgot that. Aaron Rodgers never forgot that. So when his time came, it's like, okay, now what? So now they listen to him. I think Russell Wilson should be on that same level. If he walk into your office and say, hey, coach, what do you think about this? What do you think about it? You should at least conversate with this guy. You shouldn't be like, hey, man, players playing, coaches coaching, scouts. Because you know what? it don't always work that way. And the successful guys are like the guys like Tom Brady who learned how to do it and went to Tampa Bay. And his coach, their head coach said, man, I let Tom take over some practices to a certain extent, because when you have a player with that dominance and that ability to know what he wants and what he needs from his receivers and running backs, you got to let him go. And if Russell has that knowledge now and Aaron has that knowledge, let them go. I mean, you don't let them take over your practice, but you have a segment where these guys can show their powers, because they do it on the field for you. Why not let them do it in practice too?
I think you're seeing, Kurt, a shift in the way that the league is going to look in the coming years. You saw it in the NBA when players started talking in the offseason and you started creating these super teams. I think what Jesse said, you're starting to see, and what Nate said, your quarterbacks are getting so smart that they're running their own offense. They're calling their own plays. They have so much feedback that the coaches are starting to let them run their own offense. I think they're realizing
the United States coming back.
Yeah, and I feel like they're starting to realize that, hey, if they're not going to help me win and give me what I need, then I'll go somewhere that I can do what Brady's done. I think he's changed the way the game's going to look, because now you're starting to hear, Watson wanted out of where he's at. Now you're hearing Russell Wilson, and I think it's going to – your elite quarterbacks that can go run an offense and run a team, I think you're going to start seeing ownership listen to these guys and say, hey, come be my quarterback and I'll give you more control. Hey, Aaron, you want out of Green Bay? Come here and I'll give you total control of the offense within what the coach wants to do. I think you're going to see that more and more. I think this is going to be a big deal in the NFL in the coming years. So,
because the wide receivers couldn't push it the way it needed to be done in the running backs, but quarterbacks, elite quarterback. Just think, we got 32 teams, we got all these colleges, and every year we still only talk about one or two quarterbacks coming out of the draft when there's a plethora of other positions. But everybody's looking for one elite quarterback that can take them to the next level. Are you smart enough as a coach to see this guy and envision your game plan? Are you man enough and willing enough to adjust what you do so this quarterback can take you to the next level? A lot of coaches ain't willing to do that yet.
Yep. Fellas, it has been fun. The hour goes by way too fast, and it's not often enough. But you know what? Before we know it, we'll be back doing this thing daily, because the season will be upon us really quick. I can't wait, especially to get this cold weather out of Dallas. It's not supposed to be this cold in the South.
I love it. No. I've been hibernating, man.
We so spoiled. We so spoiled. We get we ain't seen a liquor winter all October, no November. We had 70 degrees in December, 70 in January. We get 4 or 5 days of a little bit cold. All of a sudden now
we're done. We're over it.
Saying, oh my God, this winter we just can't take this anymore. We are.
The only thing I hate is I've been hibernating and ain't lost a pound. Most bears hibernate, lose weight. I gain weight.
Yeah, because you hibernate with a full refrigerator.
I was going to say, yeah, you hibernate, you're supposed to stop eating, Nate. That's how it works.
Yeah, you're right. I thought hibernate means eat more.
Nate, Jesse, Kurt, Chris Beam, thanks for keeping us on the air. We'll be back next Thursday, same time, 11:30, from Frisco or somewhere in the Metroplex. This has been Hanging with the Boys. See you, fellas.